Don't let the calm appearance fool you, because right now in many cities across the US, people are scrambling for every package of noodles, every gallon of milk, and empty shelves are becoming a common sight, just like during wartime. Think you still have time to prepare wrong. In some states, supermarkets are not just running out of goods, they're closing down in waves with no signs of reopening. This isn't an empty warning. This is happening right now as you're watching this video. Out-of-control inflation tariffs, strangling the supply chain, and wrong-headed policies from both federal and state levels. All of this is contributing to pushing certain regions into a crisis like we've never seen since the Great Depression. And if you live in one of these states, you very well might be the next person walking out of the supermarket empty-handed. The question isn't what's happening anymore, but is your state on this red list? Stay tuned until the end of this video. Because what you're about to see will make you look at your shopping cart in a whole new way. Number 1. Ohio. Ohio, once the industrial heart of America, is now becoming a new dark zone on the map of the goods crisis. But what's disappearing from the shelves here isn't luxury items, it's medicine. Sounds unbelievable, but it's true since the beginning of 2025. Many pharmacies in cities like Toledo, Dayton, and Akron have started facing shortages of common prescription medications, from blood pressure pills and antibiotics to insulin, which is a lifeline for hundreds of thousands of diabetics in Ohio. And worse yet, this isn't a temporary issue. It's a chain of quiet crises that has been building for years, now exploding into the open. Did you know many healthcare facilities in Ohio still rely on drug distributors from coastal states like New Jersey, or importation from countries like India and China? But when shipping costs skyrocket, supply lines slow down, and tariffs tighten in 2025, Ohio suddenly became a deadly bottleneck. Hospitals are running out of medication. Pharmacies have empty shelves, and those with prescriptions in hand can only shake their heads and walk away, because there's no medicine to sell. You might be asking yourself, how can medicine even be in short supply? But the reality is that many Ohio residents are being forced to return to the days of splitting pills in half, or turning to Facebook to ask if anyone has extra to spare. It's no longer a matter of money, it's a matter of survival. Imagine if you worked a labor-intensive job in a factory in Youngstown, had the money but couldn't buy basic pain relief for your joints. Or worse, if your elderly parents lived in a suburb of Columbus and their daily blood pressure medication was stuck in a shipment that's unknown when it'll finally arrive in Ohio. The issue here isn't just economics, it's about life and death. And the scariest part, no one can tell you when that last pill on the shelf will be the final one. Number 2, Michigan. If you think Michigan is sprawling, with its dense supermarket network and thriving manufacturing industry, would never run out of food, you might want to reconsider after seeing the empty shelves in the densely populated areas of Detroit last week. And no, this time, it's not meat, not medicine, but drinking water. Yes, clean bottled water is slowly becoming a luxury in Michigan. Sounds ironic. A state surrounded by the Great Lakes, once considered the largest freshwater reserve in the world, now has its residents fighting over each bottle of filtered water in supermarkets. And this isn't a joke. The water filtration systems in some small cities have been outdated for years, with tap water not meeting standards for drinking, forcing residents to rely entirely on bottled water. But what happens when the bottling plants, typically located in out-of-state industrial areas, can no longer supply enough? Residents of Flint are no strangers to water crises, but this time the crisis is spreading across the entire state, from Grand Rapids to the suburbs around Ann Arbor. With the cost of water filtration skyrocketing, coupled with new environmental regulations driving up production costs, large bottled water companies are starting to cut back distribution in less profitable areas. Who bears the brunt first? Low-income families, communities of color, and immigrant workers living far from city centers. And what's most shocking, it's seeing people line up for water as if they're living through a natural disaster, even though there's no storm, no flood. It's just, the supply system no longer has the capacity to keep up a bottle of filtered water, priced at $1.29, is now marked up twice as much at small rural stores in Michigan, if there's even stock left to sell. Do you think turning on the tap will give you clean water? Not in Michigan. Not now, and not in the near future. What's happening here is a warning to the rest of America. If a state holding 20% of the world's surface, fresh water, can't even keep clean water available for its people, then what's waiting for the rest of us? Number 3, Pennsylvania. What would happen if one morning you woke up and couldn't make a cup of coffee, prepare a sandwich, or simply pour milk for your child? In Pennsylvania, this is happening because the items disappearing from the shelves are not meat, not toilet paper, but eggs and dairy products. You heard that right. Milk and eggs, two of the most basic staples in the diets of millions of working-class families, are in such short supply that many supermarkets are limiting purchases to just 1 carton of eggs per person. In Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, or the small industrial towns in central Pennsylvania, going to the supermarket and not finding a carton of whole milk or large eggs has become all too common. The reasons aren't simple. Pennsylvania was once the top producer of milk and eggs in the East, but now small farms are disappearing due to soaring costs for feed energy and labor. Thousands of farmers are being forced to sell off their cattle and close their barns. What remains is burdened by new regulations on waste management and poultry disease control. Meanwhile, supply chains are overwhelmed and unable to fill the gaps. What's even more terrifying, when these products can no longer be produced within the state, residents of Pennsylvania have no choice but to rely on imports from other states, which are also running low, and that's when prices start soaring. Eggs nearly doubled in price in just 3 months, and basic pasteurized milk disappears from the shelves every weekend. Working-class families in Scranton or Harrisburg now face the decision: buy milk for the kids or fill up the gas tank to get to work, because just 1 gallon of milk could eat up the emergency fund for the entire week. And how much longer before people start to get angry? Pennsylvania is no longer the state of steel industry. It's becoming the focal point of a silent food crisis. And if you're in a place where eggs and milk are still available, don't assume you're safe. When a state with 12 million people is struggling to keep basic food on the table, the question becomes, how long will your state be able to hold out? Number 4, Arizona, where the sun blazes but the store shelves are cold and empty, and what most concerns the residents is, this bottled water is slowly disappearing. It may sound absurd in a developed country, but try imagining living in a desert with temperatures reaching 110 degrees Celsius, and you can't find a bottle of clean water within miles. This is not a distant scenario. It's the reality happening in cities like Phoenix, Tucson, and especially in communities far from urban centers. Arizona has always had limited natural water resources, relying on water transfer systems from the Colorado River and water treatment plants distributed by region. But now the scarcity is not just from the water source, it's from bottling distribution and stockpiles breaking down. Numerous bottled water plants have reduced their production due to shortages of plastic materials, rising electricity costs, and ongoing disruptions in federal transportation. The result, large supermarkets like Safeway, Fry's, and Walmart now have to limit customers to buying only 2 cases of water per visit. Residents of Arizona, especially those working outdoors, construction workers, delivery drivers, factory laborers, are being pushed into survival mode. You can skip meals for 1 or 2 days, but no one can withstand desert heat without clean water. Meanwhile, the municipal water systems in smaller towns are not meeting the demand, forcing many households to rely entirely on bottled water for daily living. What's even more concerning is that when wildfires occur, something that's no longer unfamiliar to Arizona residents, the firefighting teams now have to consider whether they have enough clean water to put out the fires. Prioritizing water for firefighting hospitals and schools is causing residents to be pushed to the back of the distribution chain. This is not just an issue of lacking convenience, it's a survival crisis. If bottled water is running out in a dry state like Arizona, you have to ask, is there anything safe left in this economy? Number 5, Nevada. The state of neon lights, massive casinos, and lavish tourism. But beneath that glamorous exterior, there is a truth that few dare to acknowledge. Basic medications are slowly disappearing from pharmacies, and the people are starting to panic. You can skip a meal, you can drive far to find gas, but when your child has a high fever and you can't find a Tylenol or a bottle of cough syrup, everything suddenly becomes terrifying in the most absolute way. In Las Vegas, with over 2 million residents and tens of millions of visitors each year, many Walgreens, CVS, and local pharmacies have been experiencing prolonged, empty shelves, especially with common medications such as antibiotics, cold medicine, blood pressure, medication, and insulin. This isn't due to a sudden spike in demand, but because the pharmaceutical supply chain is being squeezed to dangerous levels. Numerous containers carrying raw materials for medicine production are stuck at ports, while factories in the US have to cut back production due to rising input costs and increasing import taxes on pharmaceutical ingredients from Asia. What makes the situation even worse is Nevada's demographic structure. A state with a high percentage of elderly people and workers in the service industry. These are people who need medications regularly, cannot afford to delay treatment, and have limited options if the supply chain collapses. In many working-class communities far from central Vegas or Reno, people have to drive 40-50 miles just to find a pharmacy that is still open, and when they get there, they see the out-of-stock sign hanging in front of them. The question arises when even basic medications can't stay on the shelves. Does what we call development still have any meaning? If just a delivery delay has left thousands without medicine, what will happen if the system collapses further? Who will protect those who can't afford to buy medications at black market prices, don't have a private doctor, and can't leave the state to find supplies? Nevada is slowly becoming a land where finding a regular pill is as rare as winning the lottery. And if you think this could never happen in a place once called the entertainment capital of the US, then take a close look at those empty medicine shelves this weekend. Number 6, Texas. Do you know what Texas is known for? It used to pride itself on the motto, "Nothing is impossible." But now, in the heart of the Lone Star State, there's something that's slowly disappearing from everyday life. Bottled clean water. Yes, it may sound unbelievable, but if you live in areas like the suburbs of Dallas-Houston or along the southern border, you may have already seen the shelves of spring water, mineral water, and purified water, completely empty. Not just once, but for multiple consecutive weeks. Texas has plenty of oil cattle and vast plains, but bottled water, something that seemed cheap and always available, is now becoming a luxury item. And the reason isn't that it can't be produced, but because the entire bottled water distribution system in Texas heavily depends on factories in neighboring states like Louisiana, Arkansas, and even California, all of which are struggling with drought power shortages, high fuel costs, and labor strikes. That's not all. Some areas in Texas, especially the Rio Grande Valley, West Texas, and rapidly growing urban areas, are witnessing a frightening phenomenon. Many people are beginning to hoard water like they would gold. Because once the tap water is contaminated or cut off suddenly, something that has already happened several times in counties like Brazoria and El Paso, there's no other option but to rush to the supermarket hoping that a few bottles of water are still left. But unfortunately, they often aren't. Imagine a family with young children and elderly members with no access to safe drinking water in the middle of a scorching Texas summer. What would happen? It's not just an inconvenience, it's an emergency. And the alarming thing is that no one, not a single person in local or federal government, seems to be preparing for the worst-case scenario. Texas used to pride itself on being a state of self-sufficiency, but now just one small slip in the supply chain is enough to push millions of people into a water shortage, the most basic necessity of life, if you think water is a given. Try going to a supermarket in the suburbs of San Antonio this weekend. And look at the empty shelves and the disappointed faces of the locals. When clean water becomes a rare commodity, you'll realize that the crisis is no longer a matter of tomorrow. It's here right now. Number 7, California. Do you think living in California means living in luxury, modernity, and abundance? Think again. Because right now, there is one item disappearing from grocery stores in Los Angeles, San Francisco, and even Silicon Valley. That item is baby food. It may sound unbelievable, but if you are a parent in California right now, you understand the panic of going to 4 or 5 stores without finding a suitable can of formula for your child. This shortage isn't the first time this has happened, but in 2025, everything has gotten worse than ever. A number of baby food manufacturing plants in the West have temporarily closed due to out-of-control production costs, from raw materials, electricity, and water to worker wages. But the tragedy doesn't stop there. New state tax policies have squeezed small businesses producing baby food even further, causing them to either leave the state or go bankrupt. And do you know who suffers the consequences? It's not the politicians, but the mothers and fathers. The ones who just want to make sure their children have milk every day. They are standing in line at 6 a.m. in front of Target or Walmart, hoping that the supermarket will receive a few boxes of formula left over from the warehouses in Arizona or Oregon. But most of them leave empty-handed, frustrated, tired, and scared. What's worse? The black market is thriving. A regular can of formula that used to cost $29 is now being sold online for nearly $90. Speculators are profiting from the desperation of families. And no one is stopping them. Can you imagine a single mother working 2 jobs still having to spend almost $100 just to buy something that should be readily available in every store in California? This problem is no longer just about a temporary shortage, it's a sign of a system rotting from the inside. When a wealthy state like California, once a symbol of progress and prosperity, allows a situation where newborns can't get milk, it's not just a policy failure, it's a betrayal of the people. The question is if California, a state with a GDP in the top 5 in the world, can allow shelves to be empty like this, where else in this country can you trust that things are safe? Number 8, New York. If you're living in New York, especially in New York City, often called the heart of America, you should know a truth that's leaving millions of residents in shock. Pharmacies are empty. Not temporarily, not due to holidays, but because a pharmaceutical crisis is quietly spreading across the Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens, and even Manhattan. We're not just talking about cold medicine or vitamins. Chronic disease medications, from blood pressure diabetes to antidepressants and antipsychotics, are slowly disappearing from the shelves of CVS Walgreens. Rite Aid prescriptions are delayed. Patients have to wait 2 to 3 weeks for their next dose, and in many cases, they're forced to switch to a weaker medication or one that's completely unsuitable. Why is this happening right in the heart of the largest economy in the US? The answer is chilling. New York is almost entirely dependent on pharmaceutical supply chains from China and India, and when global shipping costs skyrocketed, coupled with new federal import policies, distribution companies have been reducing shipments. Some medications have even been completely pulled from the market because there's no longer enough profit to justify supplying them. Imagine a 75-year-old senior in Harlem who needs heart failure medication, but comes back 3 times only to find empty shelves. A mother with postpartum depression who can't continue treatment because her prescription was canceled. A young person with bipolar disorder who can't find their stabilizing medication. These stories are happening every day, and there's no sign they'll stop anytime soon. The situation has gotten so bad that some independent pharmacies have closed because they have nothing left to sell. Many doctors are forced to prescribe suggestions advising patients to find medication through online groups, or even import it themselves. The people of New York, who are used to convenience and abundance, are now experiencing a sense of helplessness, fear, and anger as they realize that even basic medications, the bare minimum for survival, are no longer guaranteed. The terrifying question is if a patient can't continue treatment simply because the medication disappears from the pharmacy, who will be held responsible for their life? And if this is happening in New York, which state can avoid it? Number 9. Florida. In cities like Miami, Tampa, Orlando, and Fort Lauderdale, the familiar sight today is empty water. Shelves frustrated customers leaving stores, or worse, scrambling for the last bottle during limited distribution runs. Popular water brands, from Dasani Aquafina to local RO-filtered brands, are disappearing in the blink of an eye. Some supermarkets have even started limiting purchases to just 2 1-liter bottles per person. Sound familiar? Because this is exactly what we used to see during wartime. The cause is not a shortage in production, but rather the escalating climate change and the growing risk of water pollution in Florida. Sea storms are increasing in frequency, and the state's water treatment systems, which have been deteriorating for years, can no longer effectively filter out chemicals, microorganisms, and pesticide residues from large agricultural areas. This summer, over 150 water quality warnings have been issued in densely populated counties, and residents are gradually losing faith in their tap water. The situation has become so dire that many restaurants and hotels have started importing water from other states, driving prices up. Bottles of water that used to cost under $1 are now being resold for 3 or 4 times that amount on e-commerce platforms. And while the wealthy still have options, the working class, those toiling under the 40-degree sun, are forced to drink unfiltered tap water to save every penny. Stop for a moment and imagine a tropical state, a long summer, frequent power outages due to storms, and now a lack of clean water. This is no longer a far-off story. It's a clear warning that a civilization can begin to collapse due to something as simple as drinking water. Number 10, Illinois. Illinois, especially the area around Chicago, was once the industrial hub of America, where goods trains and streams of workers were constantly in motion. But now what's disappearing from the supermarkets is not a luxury item, but flour. Yes, you heard that right. Flour, the foundation of basic foods like bread, pastries, pasta, and pizza. And what's scary is the shortage isn't due to war, but comes from the very farming machinery in the heart of America. If you've ever driven through rural Illinois, you'd have seen thousands of acres of wheat fields, or si or at least you used to. Since 2023, severe weather has torn apart the harvest from prolonged droughts to erratic rains that have caused the soil to become waterlogged and moldy. Many farmers have chosen not to plant due to the high risk, and bank debts have become overwhelming. The milling factories, which used to be the backbone supplying the entire Midwest, now have to reduce production because the supply of raw materials has plummeted. The result, some supermarket chains in Chicago have had to limit the amount of flour each customer can purchase, with many stores even putting up signs saying out of stock indefinitely. Bread loaves that once cost under $2 now soar to nearly $5, while small bakeries are forced to close in droves due to lack of ingredients. Everything from breakfast to dinner is being disrupted, just because a bag of flour has vanished. And do you know what frustrates the people of Illinois the most? It's that they don't know who to blame anymore. There's no singular event, no specific enemy. Just the sense of weariness as the supply chains break down, the weather refuses to follow patterns, and the government continues to argue over budgets, while the empty shelves grow increasingly more common. Ask yourself if right in the heart of America, the so-called breadbasket of the nation, people can't even buy a bag of flour, what hope is there for coastal cities or smaller towns? Could this be the first warning of a silent hunger, slowly taking shape? Through the list above, we are not trying to sow panic, but simply recounting what is truly happening out there, something that mainstream media rarely mentions. Each state may have its own reasons, but the result is the same. Empty shelves, skyrocketing prices, and the trust of the people crumbling day by day. The question is, when you walk into a supermarket next week, will what you need still be on the shelf? Or will you find yourself in a state of panic, like millions of others? And if your state is not on this list yet, is it temporary good luck or just a matter of not yet your turn? If what's happening right now makes you think, please like the video, leave a comment, and share it with your loved ones, because who knows, the next person facing empty shelves could be you.